Hello everyone, my name is Dylan Seavey and my presentation is on the corporatization of the ski industry. To go over what this presentation is going to go through, we'll go through an overview. Beginning, we're going to talk about what corporatization is, who the participating corporations are, an in-depth look into each corporation, how the corporatization affects the ski industry, some benefits and constraints, and then can the rest of the industry keep up? And then we'll kind of conclude at the end. So first we'll go into what corporatization is, and in the case of the ski industry, corporatization is the key players or the main companies that manage, operate, or own ski resorts and the property around it. So on this slide, I included a few pictures that kind of stand out in the corporatization of the ski industry. And a big one is the creation of fake villages. And so the first picture on the left-hand side I put in was actually the base at Vail. I believe this is in Lion's Head. And I just kind of wanted to show it to you because as you see the guests below, from their perspective, they can't see the mountain. And although this is a very, beautiful hotel, it doesn't really fit in the Colorado scheme. And the guests can't even enjoy what they came for, and that would be the view of the mountain. The pictures on this slide are more in-depth looks at corporatization and how the local ski bum is leaving, and the other is about more of the skiing, the terrain, the ski towns, and the environment and how that's all shifting. First, we'll kind of talk about who the leading corporations are in the ski industry, and I'm just going to list three for the sake of time, and that's going to be Vail, Interwest, and Powder. So first, we'll talk about Vail Resorts. Vail owns a plethora of resorts, not just in this country, but also in Australia, and they have a partnership in Switzerland. They own resorts in Colorado, Vail, Beaver Creek, Breckenridge, and Keystone. In California, Heavenly, North Star, and Kirkwood. Utah, Park City, which was previously Park City, but is now Park City and the Canyons together. Then in the Midwest, Afton Alps, Mount Brighton, and they just purchased Wilmot. And then in Australia, there's Perisher. It also has what's called an Epic Pass, and what that does is it allows the guest to use a season ski pass at any of the resorts that they help operate. That's in upwards of 7+ resorts. I want to say it's close to 12, and it's really unique, and a lot of people do tend to utilize this option. Vail is also a publicly traded company, and they are listed in the New York Stock Exchange as MTN. Interwest is another major company. The resorts that Interwest owns and helps operate are Blue Mountain in Ontario, Snowshoe Mountain in West Virginia, Stratton, Winter Park. They also help own and operate a mountain in Mexico. They are owned by Fortress Investment Group. This group was a private equity investment company, so the original stocks were delisted from Toronto and the New York Stock Exchange. Then in 2013, Interwest filed an initial public offering, or an IPO, with the New York Stock Exchange to range, $100 million, so they are now listed as SNO on the stock exchange. They're not nearly as big as Vail, and they're often used as a contractor for property ownership and are not the actual owners. They have, however, ended up getting rid of a lot of their former resorts, such as Mammoth, Whistler, Copper, Mountain Creek in New Jersey, and a much, much more. So they kind of are decreasing in their portfolio of resorts. They also have what is called the Max Pass, and that allows users to use 2 days at, I believe, 22 resorts. And that is kind of unique in itself, and it's not just the Interwest companies, but all the Interwest resorts are on there. The next resort company is Powder. The resorts that Powder operates are in California, Colorado, Vermont, Nevada, and Oregon. Some of the resorts are Boreal Mountain, Copper, Killington, Mount Bachelor. This is owned by the Cummings family. This is a very cute and run family business. However, they are very powerful in the industry. They actually were the group that owned Park City and ended up losing it to Vail for a $180 million sale in the late 2014. They also owned Alpine Meadows, which is now closely tied to Squaw Valley. John Cummings, one of the family members, also owns and founded Mountain Hardware, which is kind of interesting. However, there is no joint pass, such as the other two had with the Max Pass and the Epic Pass. Now to delve into how corporatization affects the ski industry. Corporatization causes profit and growth to become a top priority. These companies are focused on profit that can be made and how they can make more money. This is why a majority of these companies are now focused on building villages and investing in real estate. There's very little money to be made expanding the resort at this point, and there's also very little room to expand the resort, and that's the major issue. So the best moneymaker is now down in the village. So Vail Resorts and IntraWest are companies with shareholders, and most of the time, shareholders don't really care what the company does as long as more money is being made. And this can cause a major issue for ski towns and for local peoples. The attempt to create growth in a stagnant industry is what I mentioned before, that there is little resort terrain that can be invested in or used to expand the ski resort. So the focus has shifted to real estate and owning most of the real estate at the base of the resort. For example, Vail owns a majority of the shops at the base of Vail, such as the North Face store, as well as many, many others. There's also sustainability concerns because this drastic effort to grow the base of the resorts or attempted to expand the resort's skiable terrain, there tends to be an elimination of natural areas that used to be dedicated to animals, such as a lynx or a wolf population, whatever it may be. And the best example of this that I can think of is in Sugarbush, which I'll discuss in a few slides. There's also social and economic sustainability issues as well. The loss of community members due to rising real estate causes people to no longer afford or live in these towns because the real estate prices are too high and the price of living has skyrocketed. The loss of this community has created a loss of sense of place. These people and true locals of the area have moved out and caused the town to be a facade of what it used to be. An empty town where the ski resort and the ski town feel effect has been given to the guest by the attempt to recreate and pretend that it's still there. Vail's a really good example of this. A lot of the locals within the past 20 years have had to move out and move to neighboring towns, and it's just not the same. It's very, very tourism and ski industry driven. Now we'll go into some of the benefits and constraints as well as some of the gray area. We'll start with benefits first. The guest tends to enjoy the corporations that can offer high-speed quads, excellent grooming, and other more luxurious wants that are affordable for these resorts, unlike smaller resorts. And it's nice to know what they can expect at these resorts, and the companies are able to provide for them. And for example, all the Epic resorts have the Epic Burger, and it's kind of nice to know that, okay, at every place I can get a nice burger and fries, and it's about the same. Very similar to franchises like Applebee's. It's also the ability to fund expensive products like resort terrain expansions or high-speed quads and better snowmaking machines. They can be invested in quicker and give the guest a lot more of a luxurious experience that they're looking for that smaller resorts just can't sometimes because they can't afford to invest in all of that property or in that infrastructure changes. There's also the ability to purchase ski passes for multiple resorts at the same time and the same price as a small resort, which has for only their ski resort. So the small resort can offer a product at, let's just say, $500 for the year or for the season. You have your ski pass. No restrictions, nothing, but you're only given that resort. The Epic Pass, on the other hand, is about $500 and offers you, I'm going to say, upwards of 7 mountains to ski at with very little blackout dates. This gives the guest a better value for the same product than a small resort can offer. Now, some of the constraints for the ski resort are that these resorts are now profit motivated, so they do focus on guest satisfaction and not the community. This is a major issue because they end up losing the uniqueness of the ski town where the local people have moved away. The shareholder motivation is also a constraint. As mentioned before in the previous slide, these companies are just looking to make more money. A lot of the time that's the issue, and like I said, it makes the people move away. And the creation of these fake villages that force the price of living to skyrocket and end up kicking the locals out, it really makes the resort lose its old charm and uniqueness as well. Now to kind of discuss the gray area, the following can be positive and negative, and I'll explain why. The real estate purchases and motivations are positive for resort infrastructure improvement. It gives the resort more money to kind of fund and give these luxurious experiences to these guests. But it also creates the locals to be forced out of the town because they can't afford the price of living there. And that does tend to cause a major issue in the actual uniqueness and the fun that the resort used to have. Also, the year-round activities provide tourism opportunities for locals if they are in town or around to offer these products or services. There are also potential for environmental harms, such as water runoff and the development on certain lands and natural areas. However, this can be easily stopped by legislation and the help of the community. It gives the locals more power. Now, the big question is, can the rest of the industry really keep up with these large corporations? Now, small resorts versus corporations and company-owned resorts, there is a huge difference in between the two. A small resort can offer the charm and the uniqueness that a larger resort just can't. And that's because these corporations are just trying to be able to give the consumer what their basic needs are and the luxuries that they might be looking for, but they can't offer the unique charm. Like, for example, Mad River, Vermont has barely changed anything since they first opened up. They have Sun Valley's their old single chair, and it's still running. That's a very unique aspect. Now you compare that to Vail, who puts in a brand new 6-speed quad every day, or every season. It's very different. And the small resorts can't keep up financially. And if the ski industry and the guest wants continue to shift towards more luxurious rather than unique, these small resorts probably won't be able to keep up. And we'll be able to kind of figure that out within the next 20 years to kind of see what happens to all of these smaller family-owned resorts. Now, as I discussed before, there's a unique incident in Sugarbush, Vermont, that the community was able to stop an expansion between two mountain peaks, the Lincoln Peak and kind of their other their other resort, which I'm blanking on the name, but they were going to open up the middle section. And this middle section has been known as Common Links territory. And the local population decided that this isn't okay, and these links will have no place to go with this elimination of their usual territory. So after a good amount of fighting, Sugarbush ended up kind of giving up. And that was a major victory, not only for the Lynx population, but also to prove that communities can take advantage of their power and do what they'd like to do and what they want their community to do, compared to what the resort wants and how they can make money. And that's a huge step for the community and for the people in general. So kind of to conclude, there's a lot of good and bad of the corporatization of the ski industry. Family versus corporation is kind of the biggest constraint and benefit. The corporations can offer guests a lot of what they want, as opposed to the family-run or smaller resorts. They just don't have the funding for it. So we'll kind of see if the guest shifts more to luxurious skiing, then that may be the elimination of smaller resorts and a lot of uniqueness. There's also the loss of local population, like I said, the uniqueness, and the small town feel, which personally I'm always looking for a fun and cultural experience when I go to ski. And I know that there are people out there like me as well, but there are also people that are looking for the A+ guest experience that is offered by these corporations. There's also more efficient and can give the consumer the luxury experiences, like I said. And some corporations are more dominant than others. Vail has been acquiring more as InterWest has been slimming I'm going to call it their portfolio of resorts. And so we'll kind of see a shift in that as well, and who kind of takes the dominant lead in this. And then there's the communities will shape the future of the ski industry. Like I said with Sugarbush, and there's a similar thing that happened in Mammoth a few years back as well. The communities have been able to make a difference, and if the community decides they don't want a fake village or the expansion into certain territory, they'll be able to stop it. So we'll kind of see where everything turns out. But thank you for listening to my presentation. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll talk to you all soon.